In this Golf Smart Insight, we're going to talk about going normal. So first let's define what normal is. And that's actually fairly tricky because there are a couple different ways that you can define going normal, depending on your reference point. A normal force is essentially a force that's perpendicular. So in physics class, we always had, you would start with the equation with gravity is going straight down and normal force is going straight back up at gravity because they're perpendicular to each other. So the normal force when I'm swinging something, we can go back to head cover swing. So if I was to swing this object like so, essentially what will happen is I'm going to give it a little bit of a linear force to kind of get it going, and then boom, I'm going to get into a normal force like so, which is basically I'm going to be pulling away from the direction that it's rotating, and that's going to cause, so it's going this way because I'm pulling this way. That's essentially a normal force because I'm pulling away from where the mass is kind of going out away from me. Okay, so how does that apply to the golf swing? Well, there's a couple different ways that you could define your normal force. You could define the normal force just based on the instantaneous axis that the club is swinging around, or you could define the normal force dependent on your body. Now, because of how I look at 3D and tend to talk about the golf swing, I tend to defer more towards defining it based on a global scale or looking at your body. So in the global scale, a normal force is going to be dead up this longitudinal axis. So when the force is coming straight back towards me from this shaft, the force is normal. Anytime that there is a difference between where the force is and where the shaft is, it would not technically be normal. It could be going normal, it could be going away from normal, but it would not technically be normal. Where in the instantaneous axis method, basically if the force is not going in the direction of the target, it could be considered normal, which there was a famous paper by Nesbitt, and I believe he used that method for calculating normant force. So when I'm talking about normal force, what I'm typically referring to is the point where everything is kind of being pulled out and the force is going straight up and down that shaft. So at that point, you're basically going to have, you've maxed out your ulnar deviation, you've maxed out your elbow extension. In our particular case, you've had some forearm rotation to help get that even further away from you, but basically the grip is as far away from your body as you can get it. And it's not possible to have that point be at impact and further out at the same time. So at impact, if you were to look at it, and if you look at what Sasha McKenzie presented, there's definitely kind of these competing forces that are hopefully trying to somewhat balance out so that the force is coming somewhere back up towards me, but it's not completely normal if you're using the body as the reference point until it gets out in this position and you feel kind of that little bit of a tug. Now, the normal force is frequently described as a pulling motion, and as you saw with the head cover swings, that makes a lot of sense. But for some golfers, feeling like it's pulling motion may not make the most sense. So here would be the analogy. If you were doing a pull-up, so imagine you got a bar above you and you grab it, you're going to pull yourself up and then you're going to pull yourself down. If that makes sense to you, then yes, this is going to be a pulling motion, because essentially what's going to happen is in this pull-up, I'm going to use the muscles in my back and my shoulders to pull myself up, and then those same muscles are going to be acting while they're lengthening or doing what's called an eccentric contraction to lower myself down. But the forces going through my body are the same muscles that pull, and so if you were to measure them, they would still be working away from me in a pull direction. It's kind of what's happening here is when I go through and as I'm working towards normal, the club is moving away from me and my elbows are straightening. So all these things are lengthening out as my body works slightly backward. So I'm pulling even though it's going away from me. So that's where I think some of the confusion as far as the application of how to go normal can happen. The majority of the normal force should happen from the legs pushing the upper body back and away as your arms release, and that creates this tug on the club. What a lot of amateurs do is they get to kind of this point of no return where you've got no axis tilt, I'd be coming in very, very steep, and so they will pull their arms in and create the normal force this way. Every golfer virtually every golfer I've ever looked at creates a normal force down near impact. It's just a matter of how they do it, which is going to dictate how much success they're going to have with their swing. I think that should help clarify what I mean when I'm discussing going normal. I know that everybody else can have different definitions depending on their perspective. I just wanted to clarify mine.